that's how you do that. But I would definitely recommend getting accustomed to the viewport shortcut. So for example, 1 is front orthographic view, 3 is the right orthographic view. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to hit 1 on a number pad, and you're going to see up here it says front orthographic. You can see right up here it says front orthographic, and once again you can just go here to viewport and go into the front if number pad didn't work for you. And we're going to now select the default cube, and the way you know it's selected, you can see it has this orange outline. So if I quickly deselect it, you can see there's no orange outline, but if I click on it, I can see it's an orange outline, so I know it's what we call active. And I can also look up here in my scene collections, and I can see under this collection, here's my cube, and the cube is highlighted. It's got this blue bar around it, so I know it is an active element in my scene. So it's not my light, it's not my camera, but it's the cube itself that is selected. Now, we're currently in what we call object mode in Blender. So that's this mode up here, right? In object mode, we can see objects. We can also move them around and rotate them. But what we want to do today is we actually want to edit the geometry itself, the mesh. And to do that with this cube active, we need to actually go up to object mode and go into our edit mode. There are other things you can do in object mode. For example, if you hit the G key, you can move. If you hit the R key, you can rotate. If you hit the R key twice, you can rotate on all axes like this. But if you also hit S, you can scale. So that's super useful, but we're not going to be focusing on that today. We're going to actually be getting into the edit mode. So let's go over to our edit mode with the cube active. And what we can see here is all of these points here, which we call vertices. Right? If it's a single vertex, we call it a vertex. Okay. So what we're going to do now is you can click on any one of these verts here, and you can see they become active. You can also see up here we're currently in vertex select mode, which means if we have that enabled, we can select a vertex. If we then want to select one of these edges, we can click on the edge select mode, and then we can click on edges. So if I click on this edge or this edge, you can see we are able to select them. Then we have this thing here called face select mode, which enables us to, as the name implies, we can select individual faces. So I'm selecting this face, now I can select this face. So what we're going to be doing in this tutorial, we'll be going in between these little modes often. So let's start by just practicing some selection. So with the face select enabled, if you want to select more than one face at a time, right? So for example, I want to select both of these. What you can do is you can click on the face first, like this one, for example. And if you hold in Shift, you can click on the second face and then the third face. And then you can hold your middle mouse button, you can still move around, then just hold in Shift again and you can keep selecting faces. And holding in Shift will allow you to select multiple faces. If I let go of Shift and then I click on another face, all of a sudden it just selects that face. So that's how you do multiple. Face selections. The exact same thing goes with edges. If I select one edge and then I hold in Shift, I can select another one, hold in Shift, I can select the third one, and so on. And the exact same thing applies to the vertices. If I want to select one vertex, I can go over to the next one by holding in Shift, and so on, so forth. So you can see that's how it all works. So that's and if you hit Control R or Command, we're going to do something that might be a little bit tricky if you're new to it, but we need to add in some extra geometry. It's actually mirrored on this side here, and over here you can see that's our x-axis. The x-axis you can also see up here, this little gizmo around, then just hold in Shift again and you can keep selecting faces, and holding in Shift will allow you to select multiple faces. If I let go of Shift and then I click on another face, all of a sudden it just selects that face. So that's how you do multiple face selections. The exact same thing goes with edges. If I select one edge and then I hold in Shift, I can select another one, hold in Shift, I can select the third one, and so on. And the exact same thing applies to the vertices. If I want to select one vertex, I can go over to the next one by holding in Shift, and so on, so forth. So you can see that's how it all works. So that's just different ways of selecting essentially the same mesh, but just in a different way. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit 1 now to go into our front orthographic view. And once again, if you go to View, you can go to Viewport and do that over here by going front. And if we want to be able to model this, one thing that I'm going to teach you about are modifiers. So modifiers are these things down here. If you go and you click on the modifier properties, you can see something here called Add Modifier. So if we click on Add Modifier, you're going to see a whole bunch of things which we won't be focusing on today, but they essentially give our mesh or our geometry certain kind of properties that I apply to them that can sometimes make things easier for us. For example, if we go over down here under the generate, we can go over to what's called a mirror modifier. And the mirror modifier is essentially just going to take this geometry and take one side of it and mirror it exactly the same on the opposite side. So let's quickly go ahead and add in a mirror modifier. And now we need to select our geometry and just move it to the side. So what we're going to actually do is we can hit A to select all of the geometry. Then in our front orthographic view, we can go G, X, and move it over to the side. You can see it's actually mirrored on this side here. And over here, you can see that's our X-axis. The X-axis you can also see up here. This little gizmo shows us the X goes this way, right? The Z goes up and down like this, and then the Y goes like that. But that's from our right orthographic view, which we're not working in currently. So just hit 1 to go back to your front orthographic view. And over here, you can see we have the cube mirrored on the X. You can also change these, by the way. So you can change them like this if you want to work on different axes, but we won't be doing that. Just focus on the X for now. But what we also want to do is we want to come over here and enable clipping. When we enable clipping and we take this cube and we go G, X, remember it's all selected because we hit A to select everything. So we're going to go G, X, and we're going to move it in, and you can see these are clipping together now. They're in the middle. So we're going to bring it in just about this much, and you can see they're clipping together. See there, and if we hit G and then X to move it back on the X, so hit G and X, move it this way, you can see they're kind of stuck together, and that's what clipping is for, which is all good. Now they're fused together, and whatever we do on this side, we'll copy on that side. But at the moment, if we hit Z, so if you hit Z on your keyboard, you can go to what we call wireframe, so you can actually see through this. And at the moment, there is actually a face in between these two, which we don't want. So guys, there's actually a face here. If I just come over here and I hide the modifier, you can see there's a face in here. So let's just go to face. Face select this face by clicking on it, then hit X and delete that face. Once again, select it, hit X, and just delete the face. Now we can just bring that back and make sure clipping is enabled. So now what we can do is we can hit A again to select all of the geometry. And this time we want to flatten it, but on the y-axis, this one over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit S to scale, and we're going to go Y, and we're going to scale it down on the Y to flatten it. So about this much. Okay? If you hit 1 to go back to your front orthographic view, you can hit G, X, and you can move it like this. So we want something that looks like this, and then from the side, looks like that. Doesn't have to be exact, but just roughly these proportions. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our edge select option. And we're going to hit A twice to deselect everything. So double tap A. And then we're going to select this face here, or edge. So make sure you're in your edge select. And once you've clicked on it, hold in Shift, go to the other side, and then click on this edge. Now they're both active, as you can see. And then we're going to go S, and we're going to hit Y, and we're going to scale it on the Y like this. As you can see, that's really easy to do. And then we're going to hit 1. To go into our front orthographic view. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hit Z on our keyboard, and we're going to go to wireframe. Then we're going to go to our vertex select option. We're going to click here, and we're going to drag. So click and drag, and we're going to select just these bottom verts. And then we're going to go G. Z, and move them up to where that red line is here. That's our x-axis. So you can see it's our floor pretty much. And then we're going to go G, X, and we're going to move these in just a little bit on the X, like that. And while we have those verts selected or active, we're going to go E to extrude and then Z, and we're going to extrude them down. So extruding them down. To about here. You can also just go to your face select and just select the face action. Or vert steel active. In our front view, we're just going to go R to rotate, and we're going to rotate it a little bit like this. But one of the issues we're going to run into now, if we hit E to extrude, and we try to extrude that face in. And then we're going to do it twice, and we're going to go into wireframe. And we're going to go to our vertex select option. And over here in the front, you can just click anywhere and drag.
some songs in here, shall we?
To understand.
Searching for music for your next video? Then you need to check out Artlist.
How model.
What's up everybody, Praxis Visuals here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to flatten faces in Blender. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alright guys, so for this tutorial, you're going to need two things. One, Blender, and two, your beautiful creative minds. Okay, so I've seen a lot of tutorials on YouTube, on the internet, and how to flatten faces, and they all do the exact same thing, and it's just so annoying, so that's why I'm here making this tutorial. And what they'll do is they'll try to flatten faces by this way. They'll use this technique here. As you can see, there's creases on this little selection here, and it's just not perfectly flat. So they'll say, select your faces, and what they will do is they'll say, alright, so they'll hit S to scale it, Z on the Z axis, and then 0. And as you can see, it corrected it. There are no flat, or no.
Alright.
Modeling works. So let's hold in Shift. Enough. front view just so we can move around. Once again, just remember that. And roll your middle mouse button to zoom in. And now we're just going to hit Z and we're going to go into wireframe. And we're going to go to our vertex select option. And over here in the front, you can just click anywhere and drag.
I'll worry about that later. think I fucked it up. I think.
This is Kayla. She's a video editor on Fiverr, a platform for freelance services.
Hello and welcome to Gabbett Media. I'm Grant Abbott and today I'm going to talk about joining objects and detaching objects and some of the pitfalls and difficulties you might come across when doing so. This is all part of the Quick Tips playlist, so check out that playlist and other playlists in the description for more useful videos and courses. Also, if you like what I do, then try out my new character course. It takes you right from beginner to making a fully fledged character in Blender. As a quick reference, Control J is the keyboard command to join. Make sure you've got an active object selected, and that's in object mode. If you want to separate, go into edit mode and press P. So here I am in Blender 2.91, currently in beta, just there. Now I'm doing this in object mode, which is the default mode, and I can easily select either of these, press G to grab and move them independently, left click G to grab. However, if I go into edit mode with tab, or you can change to edit mode just up here, and now I press Shift A to add, I only get the mesh menu. I've probably got extra ones down here because I've got an add-on enabled, but you'll see these top ones here, but you won't see all the other things like curves and lights. That's because we are in edit mode of this mesh, so we can't add a light to this mesh, we can only add other meshes to this mesh. So I'll add another cube, and that's put it right on top of the other one again, where my 3D cursor is. I'm going to press G to grab to move that to the side so we don't get too confused. But you can see I'm in edit mode with both these cubes, and they are now part of the same object. If I press tab to go into object mode, you can see that now it selects the whole object together, and I press G to grab, they are joined together. I can still select this one separately because that's a separate object. So whenever you add a mesh in edit mode, it becomes part of that object. So that's one way of kind of joining meshes together, is to add them in edit mode. Let's bring this cube over here, and I'm going to join these ones like this as well. They don't have to be on top of each other. In fact, I'll create a new one, Shift D to duplicate and move this one over here, and I'll join them all together.
And lock it onto this vertex to the right. Grab it over to this point here. If you place your pointer near the vertex you want to grab to, and just simply press G, and that will grab it over, and just simply press G here and grab it over to this point here. If you place your pointer near the vertex you want to grab to, and just simply press G, and that will grab to, and just simply press G. Mapping, and select what you're going to work, arrow, and it will say copy snap. Select this mag.
Oh yeah, shit, the music. Fuck.
To understand how modeling works.
Why did this one leave and not this one? Ah, shit, not restart.
To add an object in Blender, simply go to the Add menu in the top left, go to Mesh, and select Torus. For and lighting setups. Fun fact, the largest Blender contest, which takes place at the Blender conference every year, gives out an award called the Suzanne Award. To delete an object, there are 3 ways to do it. Make sure you have the simple confirmation menu. Deleting things in edit mode will bring up another menu, which will ask you for more information. For example, you can choose to delete the vertices, the edges, or the faces that you have selected, and each one will do something slightly different. If you delete vertices, it will also delete all connecting edges and faces of the vertices you selected. If you delete edges, it will also delete any faces formed by those edges, but it will not delete any vertices that also share another existing edge. And if you delete faces, it will also delete all edges and vertices within your selection, but not delete any edges or vertices along the boundary of your selection. Deleting only edges and faces will leave your vertices intact throughout your selection, even if they are floating in mid-air.
would just leave a hot mess. And that line's still there. There we go.
Deleting only faces will leave you all of your edges intact throughout your selection, even if they're floating in midair. Dissolve vertices, edges, and faces are operators that try to combine the geometry in a way to act like your selection never existed. It will not always work, but can be very handy for removing loop cuts or extra subdivisions. Edge collapse will collapse all vertices along the boundary of your selection, caving in the geometry where your selection once was. Edge loops will functionally do the opposite of a mesh extrusion. It will reduce your selection geometry down to the next edge loop available. Edit mode has the most complex deletion options available, so while other modes and editors may have similar deletion options, they should be pretty self-explanatory if you can understand these.
This is Kayla. She's a video editor on Fiverr, a platform for freelance services.
Fuck Kayla.
So perhaps you've always wanted to learn how to make really cool stuff in 3D software. You might not have done it, you might have dabbled in it a little bit. In this tutorial, what I'm going to be doing is trying to take one video and introduce a lot of the fundamental things, the things you really need to get started. And I'm going to show you how to do it in a free software called Blender that you can very easily download without an account or a password or anything like that. So you can see here, this is the final result. I'm going to show you first of all, the software itself, just the very basics, not covering all the thousands of different things. And then I'm going to take you step by step after that through the making of this character here and how to render it out as a final result. And you can use this same logo, which is really good. So also with this one now on the side, we want to go GX and just move it over to the side like this. So we're going to a right orthographic view and we model with this cube here. That image is not intersecting with the mesh here. So now we have our front reference. And if we go into a right orthographic view by hitting 3 on the number pad, we have our side reference. Now before we lose anything, let's save this. So we're going to go File, Save As. I'm going to choose my desktop and I'm just going to call it Girl, Low Poly. And I'm going to go Save As, and now it's saved. So when it comes to actually modeling something, we can use something called primitive objects. So you can see here, for example, we have a piece of geometry. To do that, you can come up here and this is the object mode. And for now, don't worry about all of these options. And then you're going to left click and drag and select the bottom ones, and you can go S, X, and scale them along the X. So now from the front it looks okay, but if we press free on a number pad, we can see on the right orthographic view that it's not quite matching up. So we can select these at the top by left clicking and dragging, and we can go S, Y, and flatten it on the Y. You can also just left click and drag and just select just the front ones or the back ones and go G and just move them like that. So we're currently in the right orthographic. And these ones here, they're more or less in the right place, but you can also move them if you wanted to. So now we have that roughly in place. What we can do now is we can extrude this bottom face. So one way to do that is just left click and drag to select all of the bottom verts. But I'll quickly mention you also have these options up here for different selections. You can also click on the face mode, and now instead of selecting verts, you can select a face, which is a collection of verts and edges. So now you can just left click on that face, and then you can go back into your right orthographic view by hitting free, and you can go E. So E is the shortcut to extrude, and that'll extrude a face. You can also come here and click on the extrude button here, and it'll bring up some options, but it's easier just to use the shortcut. So I've extruded it down and then just left clicked, and then I'm going to just go R, and I'm going to slightly rotate that face, and I'm going to go G, and I'm just going to move it back. So one thing you'll notice is we're still using a lot of the same G, S, and R to scale, rotate, and move things, which is really cool. So now let's go to our front view by getting 1 on a number pad. And you can see here, it's kind of right at the bottom, but over here now it is lacking the right dimension. So what we can do to add in an edge is we can just come over here, hovering over an edge, and you can go Control R or Command R if you're using a Mac, and you're going to see this yellow line appear. Once you see the yellow line, you can just left click twice and it'll add it in. Then go back into your front orthographic view by hitting 1 on the number pad, S, X with that edge selected, and you can scale it out like that. Now let's just say you accidentally unselected that edge. How do you select it? By left clicking and dragging? No, not necessarily, because now that it's an edge select, you might select more edges than you wanted to. In some cases that would happen. So what you may want to do is you can actually, when there's a loop like this, you can go Shift Alt and then just left click on a edge and it'll select the whole loop. You can also just hold in Shift, and while you're holding in Shift and you're moving around, you can select multiple faces. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you guys struggle with that. That's how you select edges. So now we have that in there. If we now go to our right orthographic view by hitting free, we can see it's not quite right. So let's go to our vertex select, left click and drag to select these verts, and let's just move them by pressing G. And you can see what we're doing here. Right, it's not hard at all. We're just creating the rough shape from the front and the side. And yes, it is boxy, but what we can do now is we can progressively add more topology. So let's come here to the middle, Control R, just like we did hovering over one of these edges. You should see the yellow line appear, and then left click twice. And now what we've done, we've cut it in half here. We have an edge. It's perfectly symmetrical, but we can cheat a little bit. We can actually mirror, so we only work on one side. So let's now left click and drag and just select these verts over here. And let's press X and then go delete. And what are we working with? Vertices. So let's click delete vertices. And now we only have half an object. We can now go to the properties panel here, and let's go to our modifiers. Modifiers are just these cool things we can add to an object. I won't go into too much details, but let's just go to the add modifier, and let's just go and give this one under the generator, and that's a mirror. And all it's simply doing here is mirroring this object. So now we can't actually come here and select anything on this side, but if we select something on this side and we press G to move it or rotate it, you can see it updates on this side. But one of the issues is if we start moving things around, it pulls apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here, we're going to click on this thing called clipping. And now if you move it, it all sticks together, which is really cool, and it's going to help you a lot. Now going back into the front orthographic by pressing 1 on the number pad, you can actually see that little origin point that I talked about earlier is in the middle. And that's actually what our mirror modifier is looking at as a reference point. So now that we have that mirrored, what we can do is we can press 7 on a number pad to go to the top orthographic view. And this is looking boxy. So let's go Control R. And with Control R, we're going to see the yellow line appear over here.
Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna delete this. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I definitely forgot to change the password. Shit. Give me a sec. Like that song. Fuck you! It's not the best, but I'll make a new one. Just save it here. The side view isn't the best, but I'll make it out somehow. I'll make it out somehow.
Double click by left clicking. But for now, I'm going to press 1 to go into the front orthographic view. We'll now jump into the tutorial, and if there's anything you haven't understood, we'll just cover it slowly. I'll go over it again if need be, but you should be able to get it now that you're up to speed on Blender. So before we get into Blender and we do a little bit of modeling, you're probably going to need a model sheet, and that's just something to give you a little bit of reference. So you can actually see here on the screen that's now recording, here is a picture of a screenshot that I actually took of a model that I've already modeled to practice. So what you can do is you can just use the print screen key on your keyboard, or just use the snip tool that comes with Windows. Just about every operating system has some sort of built-in tool to allow you to do screenshots or snips. So just go ahead, and you can also crop it if you want, just so you have the picture. And once you have that, you should just have, like in this case, I just named mine Girl, and here it is somewhere on my computer. What you're going to do is you're going to open up Blender. So in this case, I am using Blender 3.2. So I'm using Blender 3.2, and it's now opened up. Now the thing that's going to be different here for me, I'm just going to enable something that's an add-on. You don't have to do this. That just enables you guys to see over here the keys that I'm pressing. So that just should help you out a little bit. But you can see here we have the default scene, as we've already kind of covered in the previous part. But what you can do is you can press 1 on your front orthographic to go into your front orthographic view, so the number pad 1. You can also just go to view, viewport, and then go to front. And what you're going to do is you're going to get that image, view, viewport, and then go to front orthographic view, so the number pad 1. You can also just go to view, viewport, and then go to front. And what you're going to do is you're going to get that image that you should have taken a screenshot of. So in this case, I have it somewhere on my computer. So I just named it Girl, and you're just going to click on it and just drag it into the front orthographic view. Make sure not
Oh, whoops. Oopsie whoopsie. What about 50? What about this motherfucker. 0, 0. Be 90 as well.
Not to drag it onto the cube, but just drag it somewhere here in the empty space. And you can see it adds it in. So now you can make it full screen again, and you have this image here in your front orthographic view. Now you can press G while you have it active. Over here, in fact, let's just quickly go and enable up here this thing called X-ray. And now we can see through. We still have this MT active. We can now make sure we have the feet sitting on the ground. So you can see this red line here. That kind of represents where the ground is. So we're going to go G, Z, and just move it down until that feet there are sitting right kind of on that red line. So now we have this front post right in the middle there, and we can use that as a reference. And how do we get the side? So the side is simple. All we have to do now is go Shift D with this active. So Shift D, just right click to let go, and then type in RZ90 and hit enter. So RZ90. And if you press N to open up your properties panel and you go to item, you should be able to see here that on the Z, it's rotated 90. So if it's not, just type in 90. Now press 3 on your number pad to go into the right orthographic view. You can see up here, right orthographic view. And now you can go G, Y, and move it on the Y till the side image is lined up here and kind of in the middle of where this cube is over here. You can also look at this blue line here as a reference. That's just the Z coordinate of points or vertices that make up an object in 3D space. So here is a cube. The one we already had, here's a circle, here's a UV sphere. So if I add in a UV sphere, you can see same thing, but just it's shaped like a UV sphere. So I'm just gonna go ahead, add back in a cube. And the reason it is actually in the center of the world here when it's added in is because of this little thing here called the 3D cursor. Now over here, you can see above the move tool, there's a 3D cursor. If you click on that, you can click anywhere and it moves that 3D cursor. That 3D cursor is where things get placed by default in your scene. It's also a point you can use to rotate around as a transform. Won't get into that at the moment. But if I now went Shift A after moving that cursor and I added in maybe a sphere, it adds it in there. So it's important if that thing isn't in the center. First of all, just click back on the move tool if you've done that. If there's ever a situation where you need to get your cursor back to the center, you can go Shift S and you can see cursor to world origin as an option here. You can actually set the cursor to all sorts of places, but to have it in the center of the world, go to world origin. It's important that you understand that as a beginner kind of concept. Also, when an object is added in, all objects in Blender have what you call an origin point. So you can see this little orange yellow dot in the middle. If you come over here to this overlays and you go to the drop down, origins may not be ticked. So if it isn't, just make sure to click on it so you can see that origin point. And that is actually the point where things rotate around. So if you go R, where it rotates around it, if you go S, it scales from that point, and G, all of those transforms look at that origin point. So in 3D, I've already shown you guys previously how you can scale, move things around, rotate things. But how do you actually edit a piece of geometry? To do that, you can come up here, and this is to object mode. And for now, don't worry about all of these options. Just focus on the edit mode. If you go into edit mode with an object selected, you're going to now actually see, instead of seeing not only the whole object, but you actually now see the vertices that make up these objects. In this case, you can see you can actually left click on an individual point, and just like you can move things in the object mode, you can also go G and R. At the moment you can't really notice rotation. You'd have to select more than 2 to see that, but exact same thing. And this is how you can actually go back into object mode. You can see the origin point, actually the origin point. So it's important that you guys understand what the origin point is and how that all works. You could almost look in object mode, an object in object mode, as being just a collection of verts that are connected to this group. And the vertex standard, let's actually model here. So currently we have the X-ray toggled on. You can also toggle it off so you can see through. Completely up to you, but for now I'm going to press 1 to go into the front orthographic view. We have our image set up and we have our cube, which we're going to be using. And let's go G and then Z to restrict it to the Z. Let's just move it roughly to where the body is here. In fact, I'm going to turn the X-ray on for now so I can see. And let's go S.
Okay.
And let's scale this down to about here. So it's almost the width of the body, like that. And as long as your cube is just roughly in the middle, it can be down a little bit or up, doesn't really matter. But what you're going to do is you're going to press tab to go into edit mode, or you can just come up here and go into edit mode that way. And inside of edit mode, you're going to left click and just drag over these top vertices to have them selected like that. And then you're going to go S, X, and scale them on the X axis. You can even see up here that red is the X, and you can actually see the numbers written here on the different colors, or the letters on the different colors. And then you're going to left click and drag and select the bottom ones, and you can go S, X, and scale them along the X. So now from the front it looks okay, but if we press 3 on a number pad, we can see on the right orthographic view that it's not quite matching up, so we can select these at the top by left clicking and dragging, and we can go S, Y, and flatten it on the Y. You can also just left click and drag and just select just the front ones or the back ones and go G and just move them like that. So we're currently in the right orthographic. And these ones here, they're more or less in the right place, but you can also move them if you wanted to. So now that we have that roughly in place, what we can do now is we can extrude this bottom face. So one way to do that is just left click and drag to select all of the bottom verts. But I'll quickly mention you also have these options up here for different selections. You can also click on the face mode, and now instead of selecting verts, you can select a face, which
delete that. Delete that. Okay. Same shit. Anyways. Faces. Boom. And now, let's see. Tool and modifier. Mirror. Clipping.
Again, going to over to the side of it. So just we're going to do something that might be a little really easy to do.
Fuck.
The body, as you can see, the upper chest, and as we do still, and we have to temporarily just come here under our modifiers to our mirror modifier and just untick clipping. So now if we hit E to extrude and we extrude it out,
Okay. Man, I'm fucking starving. I'm gonna make myself some noodles later.
So I just hit E to extrude, so we're extruding it out, and then just click somewhere here to stop that action. You can see we've now extruded the legs. We can now enable clipping again, as we do still need the clipping. With these verts still selected or active, we can now go S to scale them. And if you accidentally did deselect them, all you have to do is just click somewhere here, just drag over them and select them. You can also just go to your face select and just select the face. So for now, let's just actually go to face select and select the face.
It's looking pretty good. Yeah, I forgot the song.
Which is a collection of verts. Move them by pressing G. And you can see what we're doing here. Did that out. So this is already starting to look a lot better, and we've just used some very simple modeling techniques. Let's also just select this vertex down here by left clicking on it, and let's just go X and delete that vertex. So we now have this open like so. And let's just also select this one at the top here. Let's go X and delete that vertex as well. Okay, so one to go back into the front orthographic view. And let's continue extruding this topology up and making the rest of the body. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have our vertex select option enabled. We're still in edit mode. We're going to left click and drag in our front orthographic view, and we're going to select these verts over here. So once they are selected in your front orthographic view, remember one to go into front orthographic view, you're going to go E to extrude and then just move it up to about here on the reference, or just under the neck, and then you're going to go R, so R to rotate and rotate it this much, and then left click and then just G again and just move it till it's lined up to the bottom of this V here. This delta. Then you're going to press free to go into your right orthographic view, and then you're going to go S, Y, and flatten it on the Y, like that. Okay, back into the front orthographic view. Let's go E to extrude and extrude it up like so, and leave it at about here. Let's go into our right orthographic view, and we're going to go S, Y, and scale it on the Y about that much. And then we're going to go Control R or Command R, hovering over one of these edges. You should see the yellow line. Then you're going to just left click once. And then if you move the mouse, you can slide. So you're going to slide it to about here, and then left click again, and that should put it in place. And while that is still active, you can go Alt S. And what is different about this, and I won't really get into normals at the moment too much, but you have these things on the faces called normals. They're like these directional points that the face is kind of, like I'll quickly show you because it's kind of hard to explain. I'm just going to enable something. You guys don't have to do this, but it's just so you understand kind of what's going on here. I'll quickly show you. So these things here, right, the normals. Now if you just press S by itself, it just scales everything as like an average. But if you go Alt S, it looks at these normals and it scales out along the normals, and it does it a little bit in a different way. So going Alt S to go back into the front orthographic view. I'm going to come over here, Control R over one of these edges, left click once and then move the mouse to bring it down, and then Alt S and scale it out like that. And then just like that, we have this little thing forming here quite easily. And what we can do as well, just Control R, hovering over this edge here, double click to add in an edge, and over here as well, the back, Control R, and then double click. And now we have a bit more topology. I'm also just going to come in here, Control R, hovering over one of these edges, and just double click once to add in an edge.
Oh shit. it's looking pretty good at the moment. But I'm gonna pause it here for now.